with the system of oppression in the state of Kansas. This black bourgeoisie has 5 families, just like the mafia. They have 5 families. The first, and they're in no order, but the first is the intellectual bourgeoisie. These are black people with doctorates, JDs, MDs, PhDs, PsyDs, and every kind of doctorate you can think of. Their job is to intellectualize the problem and make you think that you actually created it. They work in Kansas's top universities. They work in your school district. They work in the community college system. They're the most formally educated, but yet when it comes to commitment to African people, they have almost none of it. That's the intellectual bourgeoisie family. They're the ones you see on CNN. They're the ones you see on the nightly news. They're the ones you see on the panel discussions. They're the one you see having roundtable meetings with the president. They're chosen because they know that they're not going to tell the truth about your condition. When George Zimmerman was acquitted, you saw many of these intellectual bourgeoisies on the news trying to defend the system, arguing that George Zimmerman was acquitted because of the law and not because of the color of his skin. They said the reason black people are upset is because they don't know the law. If they knew the law, they would know that this case was not about race. Well, let's look at that for a minute. If George Zimmerman was a black man who got out of his car after being told to stay in it and pursued a white boy in a white suburb and shot him 50 feet from his front door, would he have been acquitted? No. Of course not. One thing you have to understand is that everything that happens in America is essentially about race and racism. And if you don't understand white supremacy, nothing else you learn will make any sense to you. If you don't understand white supremacy, you don't understand why so many educated black men marry women from other races. If you don't understand white supremacy, you don't understand why so many black women spend a greater portion of their disposable income trying to look like white women. If you don't understand white supremacy, then you don't understand the light-skinned supremacy in the black community that still has grandmothers and grandfathers looking behind the ears of their newborn grandchildren to see how dark they're going to be in 10 years. If you don't understand white supremacy, you will think that President Obama was selected for your best interests. But when you understand white supremacy, you understand that black faces in high places has always been the order of the day. Because under white supremacy, a minority cannot oppress a majority without participation of key individuals from the majority group. So wherever there is white racism, there is black complicity. So whenever you see a black problem, your first question should be, which Negro in Kansas City or which group of Negroes in Kansas City are helping to perpetuate this injustice? So after you've identified the intellectual bourgeoisie, you then move over to the media Negropede. These are black people in Kansas who have radio shows. Black people in Kansas who have TV shows. Black people in Kansas who write for and or own newspapers and magazines. Websites that bring in millions of visitors on a daily basis. But instead of talking about the miseducation of our children, instead of talking about the unemployment of our men, Instead of talking about the infant mortality rate of black women, the highest in the Western world, instead of talking about police brutality, they rather spend their whole show, their whole website, the whole newspaper, the whole magazine, talking about Kanye West and Kim Kardashian's baby. Northwest North. What the hell is Northwest North? Or they spend the whole show talking about the upcoming BET Awards. Or they spend the whole show talking about the trades that was made in the offseason for the Kansas City Chiefs. In other words, they spend your time entertaining you until your enemy has exterminated you. When you call them up and say a brother was shot last night, can we get some airtime? Sorry, no can do. Because most of them are financed by white folks. And a black newspaper, black radio station, black TV station that's financed by Europeans is not a black station. If the blood in your body is predominantly European, then so are you. The third family is the status bourgeoisie. These are Negroes with titles. And you know black people love titles. You can give a brother a title and you won't even have to pay him no more. Just give me a title. Just let me look better than other black people and you ain't even got to pay me no more. It's a $100,000 a year job, or you can be president of the company. Give me the presidency. I've never seen a people with so many titles who don't own a single institution. These are the Negroes who in City Hall. I'm a city council person. I'm a ward leader. I'm deputy mayor. I'm commissioner of minority business affairs. Ain't a black person with a damn contract in the city, and you got a commissioner for minority business. I'm the vice president of such and such corporation. I'm senior secretary of such and such corporation. The illusion of inclusion. And we suffer significantly from the illusion of inclusion, the belief that you are part of the system when you are only being used for the perpetuation of it. And you have to know the difference. The next family are blacks with money. You got a couple families here in Kansas City, they got some dollars. They got some long money. Some of them got some new money, first generation. And some of them got some old time money, they fifth and sixth generation. They might not be multi-millionaires, but they definitely 100,000-heads. But they never got $1 for your after school program. They never got $1 for that school you're trying to open for African children. They ain't got no money for a program for the elders. But whenever the Boys and Girls Club need a loan, whenever people of other cultures are running short, whenever the YMCA or YWCA need a check, they can always get one. But when anybody who looks like them needs some money, they never round to pass that off. And then that next group, one of the most dangerous. So we talked about the intellectual, we talked about the status, we talked about blacks with money, and we talked about the media. The fifth family is the most dangerous family in Kansas City, and that is the religious bourgeoisie. Many churches, but not all of them. Some mosques, but not all of them. Some Hebrews, but not all of them. Some Jehovah's Witnesses, but not all of them. Baptists and Seventh-day Adventists and all kind of stuff we got. They got the attention of the people. Thousands in front of them every Sunday. But instead of organizing that black pain, instead of organizing that black anger, instead of organizing that black spirituality to do something constructive and measurably progressive, they simply dissipate your energy into dreaming about how great life going to be after you die. When you woke up this morning and got ready for church, you said, I'm going to go in here today and I'm going to demand that my pastors do something about what's going on in the neighborhood. I'm going to make a demand. We need to use the church to organize.
Yes.
But by the time you got the church and you heard that sermon, and he started playing games with your consciousness and started leading you to believe that you ain't got to do nothing to change your condition. All you have to do is pray, increase your faith, and leave a couple dollars in the church. My issue is not with black religion. I don't have an issue with black Christianity or Islam or any of the religions. My issue is with how they are being used to keep you asleep. The church used to be the most revolutionary institution we ever had. Nearly every struggle we had was born and birthed and bred in the black church. But in 1965, after the Civil Rights Bill was passed, the United States government came up with a clever idea. They said, we don't seem to be getting too far using white people to oppress black people. How about we start using black people to oppress black people? And if the church is the breeding ground for revolution, we must turn it into the breeding ground for passivity and docility. And George W. Bush, the son, created a pathway where the federal government can start giving money to the churches. And so black churches who were once against sexual confusion openly endorse it now. Black churches who once stood up against police brutality are now turning a deaf ear because they're being financed to keep you asleep. Some of you think that religion and politics are separate because you haven't studied military science. You haven't studied global history. Whenever a conqueror comes into a people's land, there's 3 institutions that they must take over. And if you take over these 3, you can pretty much guarantee that you will dominate the population. The first institution is the church. Spiritual incarceration is necessary. Because most people who crusade go on crusades for spiritual reasons. So if you can convince them that it is in your best interest not to fight the power structure, then you can put them to sleep for perpetuity. So the church must be taken over by the state. And the second institution is the school system. Intellectual incarceration. If you can teach the children to love thy enemy and hate thyself, you can rule them for a million years unquestioned. And the third is the local police department. Physical incarceration. So there will be no opportunity for resistance. But if you control the spirit, if you control the mind, if you control the body, you got the entire community. My problem with the church is that it functions much like a drug, like a narcotic. People who are addicted to alcohol and cigarettes and marijuana and hard drugs and sex and over shopping and overeating. These are people with personal psychological problems that need to be addressed. But because they don't have the willpower to face their pain to get to heaven, they rather dissipate it through some sort of temporary enjoyment. Every addiction grows out of someone constantly doing something that doesn't work to deal with an issue that they need to overcome. And so when the black church stopped solving problems and started teaching you to be comfortable with them, stopped solving problems, but simply chose to condition you to be comfortable with your condition, at that very moment, the church became an agent of the state. The hypocrisy of our religious institutions, and I'll put them all together. I don't lump them, I don't separate them. They all guilty of doing next to nothing. The problem with the church is how can you hate the devil so much? How can you claim to love God so much? How can you spend so much time talking about heaven, but you're totally comfortable with your congregation living in hell every damn day? And the sad thing about the church is that the church is one of the biggest weapons of mass destruction we have. Because if I was a pastor and you were the congregation, you put a certain amount of money in the tray every Sunday. I'd take that money to a white bank. I want y'all to stay with me. So every Sunday I'm putting 10, 20, 30, 50, $100,000 in a white bank. The same white banks that are gentrifying Kansas City. The same white banks that are raising the property value and pushing your mother out of her house. The same banks buying up whole city blocks in Kansas City, building mini mansions, forcing you out of the inner city. Do you know whose money they're using to push you out of your own neighborhood? Your Jesus money is financing your Negro removal. Isn't it something that grandma been going to that same church for 30 years? Grandma been putting $50 in the church tray every Sunday for 30 years. And one day grandma gets a letter saying that the city has decided to confiscate your house, eminent domain. We've decided that you have to move because we need your house for something better for all the people. And now grandma, who's on a fixed income and retired for 20 years, they know how much she makes, is now being put on the street out of a house she bought 30 years ago. She don't even know that it was her own money that she gave to Jesus that actually put her on the street. Which is why when we organize, we have to organize to the last power. We could get together right now and build black institutions. But if the money is holding in a white bank, it's still working against you more than it's working for you. Which is why we have to talk about building a black bank in every city where black people are. Economic empowerment dictates that black people put their money in the same coffers. See, I cannot control how you spend. I cannot control where you spend. I can't stop you from spending extra amounts of money on clothes and pocketbooks and cars. I can't control that, but I could probably convince you to keep your money in the same place with mine until you decide to spend it. So if all of our money is in the same place, take everybody in this room collectively, you're looking at several $1 million of annual earning, just in this room. If that several $1 million was in the same bank or savings and loan institution at the same time, anyone in here who needed to tap into a loan to build your school, your daycare center, your dance studio, your house from the ground, you would be able to get the loan because it's being backed by all of our funds together. That's where we have to go. Let's talk about this. America has a system in place to destroy African American children, and especially the boys. I refer to it as the psychoacademic war or Holocaust against black boys. And it has 5 stages. And before you leave here today, I want to make sure you are equipped with some tools that you can use to protect your son, because school is about to start up. Has it started already? Yeah. How long they been in a week? 2 weeks? Some of y'all already getting phone calls that we want to test your son for special education. Some of y'all already getting phone calls, we think he has ADHD. Some of y'all already getting phone calls, we think he need a little bit of Ritalin or Adderall. Some Strattera, some Cyclone, some Adderall or some Vyvanse, some Concerta, so he can sit still long enough to be miseducated by middle-class white women. Some of y'all.
I worked right in there.
Are already feeling the pressure of this war. What's the first stage of the psychoacademic Holocaust? Miseducation. It has 3 goals. Number 1, to teach the black boy to hate himself. Number 2, to teach him to love European culture. And number 3, if possible, to effeminize him before graduation. If you haven't been paying attention, open your eyes around Kansas City, and you will see that many, not all, but many of the black men who are holding positions of influence because they don't have any power, positions of influence in the colleges, positions of influence in the church, positions of influence in government, positions of influence in the business sector, are more effeminate than they used to be 30 years ago. One of the reasons that so many of our college-educated sisters are dating brothers on the corner instead of brothers who are equally yoked educationally is because the brothers who are equally yoked educationally lost some of their swagger in the process. Y'all know what I'm talking about.